Hello and welcome to Train Signal. This is video number 2, Introduction to Linux Certifications, part of Fast Track CBT video series, Linux Networking and Administration. So here's our table of contents for this video. First off, we're going to talk about the CompTIA Linux Plus certification. We'll cover the Red Hat, Certified Technician, and Certified Engineer certifications. We'll talk about the LPI certification. That's the Linux Professional Institute. They offer the LPIC 1 and LPIC 2. We'll learn about Novell's Certified Linux Professional and Certified Linux Engineer, and then the Linux Certified Administrator certification, and various Unix certifications. So with that, let's get started by talking about the CompTIA Linux Plus certification. CompTIA offers a number of Plus certifications. They offer the A+, Net Plus, Server Plus, and there's a long list of other certifications offered by CompTIA. One of the benefits to CompTIA is it's a vendor-neutral certification. So you're not just certified on Red Hat Linux when you learn the Linux Plus material. You're certified on all sorts of Linux material. There's so many different types of Linux out there. The Linux Plus certification, tries to get a little bit of all the different Linuxes and certify you on those. Now let's go to the home page here for the CompTIA Linux Plus certification. It's at comptia.org/certification/Linux. So I'm going to click on that. And I just wanted to show you the home page here briefly. You can scroll through here. You can purchase your Linux Plus, exam vouchers. You already have quality, training materials by having this video about Linux. And we're going to focus, primarily on Linux Plus in this video. We're going to focus really hard on trying to cover all the different Linux Plus objectives that are available or that are listed, for the test. So you've seen the website. Let's go back. Let's talk a little bit more about it. The Linux Plus certification validates 6 to 12 months of Linux experience. So that's what they recommend you have. Now, if you've gone through a quality preparation program, probably you don't have to have that much experience, but, that's what they suggest. A single exam costs $218 in the United States. It's 98 questions, and you have 90 minutes to answer those 98 questions. It's a form-based, conventional, computer-based exam. So you go to one of the testing centers, either View or Prometric, and take your test there on one of their computers in their testing center. Go through the form-based exam, complete your questions. You must have a 675 on a scale of 100 to 900. So it's a little weird like that, but roughly 75%, I believe it was when I did the math, you have to score to pass the exam. They recommend that you have an A+ or Network Plus certification or some sort of other network, experience, because there are a few different networking questions on the test as they relate to Linux. So with that, let's scroll through the objectives here. I took these objectives right from the Linux Plus exam certification, website. So what they do is they have different domains here. They have 6 different domains. Each of those domains has a certain percentage, of material on the test. So the installation domain has 19%, management domains 26%. That's the highest in most popular number of questions come from the management domain. 20% is configuration, 21% is security, so that's pretty important. 6% is documentation, and 8% is hardware. So let's scroll through and look at the different domains here. First off, we have installation. As we said, installation is about 19%. Requires you demonstrate knowledge and skills to determine the installation method, select appropriate settings, protocols, software packages, and validate correct performance. Covers activities as they relate to initial installation of the operating system. So you have to know how to install the operating system. And that's why one of the videos in this series is going to be about installing the operating system. We're going to go through the whole installation, cover all the different options, show you exactly how it's done. Let's look down here, and here's the sort of sub-objectives: 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So identify the correct hardware, CPU, RAM, scalability, compatibility, Linux distributions, we talked about those. Determine the appropriate method for installation. You could install it from a boot disk, a CD-ROM, over the network. What multimedia options do you want to install? The purpose of the machine. Is this going to be a desktop system, a database server, a mail server, web server? Partition the operating system. We're going to cover that in the installation video. Configure the file system to use. There's different file systems you can choose to use. Configure a boot manager. This is what tells the operating system how to boot multiple operating systems. Manage packages. So these are different applications you can install and how to install them. The appropriate network configurations, appropriate languages, peripherals. And then we come to the management domain. As I said, this is the most popular with 26%. This is about everyday management of Linux. Managing users, disk systems, files, directory searches, linking, permissions, ownership of those files, backups, restores, writing to CD-ROM, processes. This is about processes here. Seeing what processes are running on the system, killing processes, putting jobs in the background or foreground, lowering the priority of processes, repairing packages, scripts, troubleshooting network activity, manipulating text files from the command line. There's a lot of command line questions on the Linux Plus exam, by the way. And that's why they recommend 6 to 12 months of Linux experience. In my opinion, I think a lot of that is just so you get used to using the command line. You might have a lot of trouble on the Linux Plus exam if you aren't familiar with a lot of the command line commands. There's many questions on the test that cover command line options. For example, if you're using tar, that's the tape archiving utility. What command line options do you use on that to extract a file or to compress a file and move it into the archive? We're going to learn things like this in this video series, but just something I want to point out as to how many command line questions there are on the Linux Plus exam and how important that is. It also talks about remote management, shell scripts, adding users from the command line, scheduling jobs, redirecting output. Then we come to the configuration domain. This is configuring system settings, network services. So we have like TCP/IP, configuring network adapters, DNS, DHCP, Samba, sharing Windows files, Apache web server, routing and subnetting, mounting file systems, DNS, printing, printer permissions, log files, terminal variables. There's a lot of stuff in this exam. It gets a little bit overwhelming. Don't let all the material that this exam covers frighten you away, though. There's a lot of different material that it does cover, a wide breadth of material that it covers, but don't let that scare you away, because passing this exam is very doable, especially after going through a video series like this and getting a little bit of hands-on experience on a Linux machine. The next domain here is security. Security is 21%. It's important to know how to configure security environmental variables and edit files associated with security, delete accounts while maintaining that user's home directory, install appropriate encryption. Let's see, detect symptoms that indicate a machine security has been compromised, viewing log files, using SU, that's the super user command, setting processes and special permissions, IDS systems. There's just a little bit on that. security requirements, like using the firewall program that comes inside Linux, security auditing, package corruption, file corruption, using programs like checksum and tripwire, password policies, security vulnerabilities in Linux services, and setting up users. The next domain is documentation. So it talks about how to develop a baseline, what programs you would use to do that, having a written procedure, troubleshooting errors using system logs, and using command line utilities to manipulate log files. And then, of course, help files, or programs you use to access help files. Then there's hardware. A lot of the hardware has to do with just understanding IRQs, DMA, memory addressing, SCSI, diagnosing hardware issues, what to do when you have a problem. How do you troubleshoot that? How do you troubleshoot different problems? Configuring power management, removable devices. So there's a lot of information, as I said, that's covered in this exam. But don't get frightened away by it. We're going to cover all of these topics in this video series, so you'll learn all this stuff. With that, let's go on to the Red Hat Certified Technician and Certified Engineer certifications. So I want to talk about two different certifications in this slide here. The first is the Red Hat Certified Technician, and that's the RHCT. The second is the Red Hat Certified Engineer, and that's the RHCE. Now, both of these focus on Red Hat Linux, specifically Red Hat Enterprise Linux, not Fedora. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux is the commercial version that you have to pay for to use. Now, there are some clones of that, people who have taken the source of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, recompiled it, and then they offer it for download for free. Nothing illegal about that. That's how the licensing agreement works. So you can get a version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux for free if you use a clone. You can also use Fedora, and these two are so similar that when you go to take the exam, there's not a lot of difference between those two. So if you know one, chances are you'll do just fine and be able to do it on the other one. So this is a vendor-specific certification, unlike Linux Plus, which was a vendor-neutral. So Red Hat certifications here, of course, focus on Red Hat Linux specifically. Red Hat pushes training classes, but they're not required. So if you go to their website and you look for information about these certifications, chances are you'll be directed into some sort of training class information, and you have to sort of work your way around that to find the information on how just to take these exams. Because taking those certification classes are not required in any way. Here's the website here for the Red Hat certifications. I'm going to click on that. We'll just go take a look at it. They have an exam preparation guide here, and if we scroll down, it goes through all the different things you should know about these certifications. It goes through the study points that you should be familiar with, the different skills for RHCT and RHCE, and then of course there's these courses that they highly recommend you take. You can also use the topics that these courses cover as lists of things to study for. There's some good books out there as well on RHCE and RHCT. You can click here and we can go over and look at the engineer program. They have a pre-assessment test, and if you scroll down here, it talks about the different classes, of course they recommend you take, and here is actually the tests, the RH202 and RH302. The 302 is the certified engineer, the 202 is the certified technician. And we're going to talk about the costs and everything here in just a second. Now, both exams are hands-on tests and must be taken at Red Hat testing centers. So this is very different from the Linux Plus certification. The Linux Plus, you go to a Prometric or View Testing Center, sit down at a computer and you go through, 90 multiple choice questions or 98 multiple choice questions. You have to answer those, and get them right. The Red Hat Certified Technician and Engineer certifications are completely different. You go to a Red Hat testing center and you have to sit down at a PC with a monitor, keyboard, and mouse and load Linux, configure Linux, do the things that they want you to do, and when you're done, a test proctor comes over and sees, if you did it right or not. So very hands-on, could be, much more intimidating than just sitting down at a computer to take a test. Here you actually have to sit down and really do this stuff. So you have to really know it. There's no guessing that's going to help you out. You don't get to use the manuals or books on these exams. So it can be a little bit intimidating. But if you have some good hands-on experience with Red Hat and you've loaded Linux multiple times and you know how to configure it properly, chances are you'll do pretty well. Now, we said there's two different exams. The first one is for the Certified Technician, and the exam code's RH202. The cost is $349. So that's significantly more than Linux Plus. The RH Certified Engineer is $749, and that's much more than the Linux Plus. The time for the Technician exam is about 3 hours. You have to complete all these different tasks they give you. The Red Hat website says that you should be able to set up and manage a new Linux system on an existing network. So that's what you should be able to do to pass the Certified Technician exam. Of course, there's exam objectives we talked about. But the Engineer exam here is about 5.5 hours. And they say you should be able to set up and manage Linux servers running production network services and security. The interesting thing about these two tests is they're related. You can take the Red Hat Certified Technician exam and the Certified Engineer exam at the same time. The RHCT is half of the RHCE. So if you fail the RHCE portion of the RHCE exam, you can still become an RHCT if you pass the RHCT portion of the exam. So I said this is the technician exam is 3 hours, and this one's 5.5. So really what the 5.5 exam here is it's the certified technician portion, this first 3 hours, plus an additional 2.5 hours. So if you fail the additional 2.5 hours worth of exercises on the RHCE exam, but you pass the 3 hours worth of exercises on the RHCT portion, you can still become an RHCT. So in that case, you would just pay the $749, but you didn't pass the RHCE, you become an RHCT. Or you can choose to just go take the RHCT exam only, try out 3 hours worth of exercises, see if you pass and become an RHCT. So it's a little unique in that aspect. And we already went and looked at the different exam objectives. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that. A lot of the things you need to know for the Linux Plus exam are the same things you need to know for the Red Hat exam. The Red Hat exam is just more hands-on, and it's focused specifically on Red Hat Linux. The RHCE is a very well-respected certification because it is such a hands-on exam. And, everyone knows that that's going to be more stressful, and you really need to know what you're doing for a hands-on exam versus just a computer-based forms, question and answer exam. So with that, let's move on to our next certification in the list. Now let's talk about the Linux Professional Institute certification. This is a vendor-neutral organization, so they don't push any certain type of Linux. Their website is lpi.org, and the certification they offer is called the LPIC. This is a Linux System Administration certification. It stands for Linux Professional Institute Certified. Let's go to their website and just take a look at what they say about the LPIC certification. It's designed to certify the competency of system administration using the Linux operating system and its associated tools. It's designed to be distribution neutral, following the Linux standard base and other relevant standards. It's designed in 3 different levels, and we're going to talk about those 3 different levels. The first one is a junior level administration, or the LPIC 1. You have to pass 2 different exams to be an LPIC 1. We scroll on down here, there's an LPIC 2, an intermediate level administration, and you have to again pass 2 more exams. And if you scroll down, we have the LPIC 3, which is still under development. Currently you can't take the exams to get LPIC 3 certified. So let's go back to our slides and talk about the 2 different levels. So the first one is the LPIC 1. We said it's a junior level administration. You have to take exam 101 and 102 to become LPIC 1 certified. Each of the exams are $150 each, so the total is $300 to become LPIC 1 certified. To pass the exams for level 1, you should be familiar with working at the command line, perform easy maintenance tasks to help out users, add users to large systems, back up and restore, shut down and reboot the system, as well as install and configure a workstation using X Windows connected to the LAN or a standalone PC connected to the internet. So this is a junior level administration certification, 2 tests, $300. If we scroll down, let's look at the LPIC 2. This is an intermediate level administration. You have to take again 2 more exams, $150 each. You have to have passed the LPIC 1 certification first. And then to pass these exams, you should be able to administer a small to medium-sized site, plan, implement, maintain, keep consistent, secure, and troubleshoot a small mixed network with Microsoft and Linux machines, including Samba, Internet Gateway with firewall proxy, mail, news, and an Internet server, supervised assistance, advise management on automation and purchases. LPIC 3, as we said, is an advanced certification, but it's currently under development. So the LPI certifications, or the LPIC certifications, aren't as popular as Linux Plus and Red Hat, but the LPI certification is still relatively popular, and there's over 30,000 LPIC certified individuals out there in the world. Now let's move on to Novell and their Linux certifications. So currently Novell offers 2 different Linux certifications. The first one is the Novell Certified Linux Professional, or the CLP. Here's the website here for that certification. And since Novell owns SUSE Linux, this certification is based on SUSE Linux for the most part, but they say it's also more of a vendor neutral certification, but really it's owned by Novell, and a lot of it is based on SUSE. So I wouldn't really consider it to be too vendor neutral. You must take the exam at a Novell testing center, not at View or Prometric. And this is a hands-on problem solving and troubleshooting exam. So you could compare this to the Red Hat Certified Technician or Certified Engineer exams. The exam is 2 to 3 hours and costs $195. After you get that exam, you can move on to the Novell Certified Linux Engineer 9 program, which is a master level exam that requires you to first pass the CLP, or the Certified Linux Professional exam. There's their website. Again, this is a hands-on problem solving and troubleshooting exam. It must be taken at a Novell testing center, and it's 2 to 3 hours and costs another $195. So 2 different exams here. The master exam, or the CLE, builds on the CLP, both based on Novell's SUSE Linux for the most part. Just a couple other additional Linux certifications, certainly not as popular as the Linux Plus and the Red Hat certifications. Let's move on to another Linux certification. I just briefly want to talk about the SAIR GNU Linux certification, or the LCA. That stands for Linux Certified Administrator, LCA. There's 2 levels of the LCA, level 1 and level 2. Each level requires that you pass 4 tests, and each exam costs $99. So for level 1 you will have paid $396, and the same for level 2. Let's go to their website here, linuxcertification.org, and you can see here the roadmap for the different tests. and there's test objectives if we click on each one of these. So for level 1 LCA, you have Linux security, networking, administration, and installation tests you have to pass. Level 2, SendMail, Samba, Apache, Linux core concepts. So this would make you an LCE, or Linux Certified Engineer. Now the LCA certification certainly isn't as popular as some of the other Linux certifications we've talked about, especially when compared to Linux Plus and Red Hat. The LCA just doesn't have a lot of following or support, but I wanted to mention it so that you know that there's this option out there, and it does exist. With that, let's talk about some Unix certifications. So here's a couple Unix certifications I just want to bring up so you're aware of all the options that are available. As I said, this video series is primarily going to prepare you for the Linux Plus and the Red Hat certifications. But if you're ever interested in getting a Unix certification, there are a couple different options out there available for you. The first one is the Sun Certified Solaris Administrator, or SCSA. This covers Solaris Unix 10. There's their website there, and they have the Sun Certified Network Administrator specialty and the Security Administrator specialty. So these aren't really based on Linux, but they're based on Unix. So this is Sun's Unix, which they call Solaris. It's not going to have all the same commands as Linux, but you know, a lot of the functionality is going to be the same. Of course, it has to run on a Sun box using the Sun operating system. Then there's the IBM AIX Certified Specialist and Certified Engineers certifications. AIX is IBM's Unix. It runs on IBM RS-6000s or PowerPC machines made by IBM. This is the website, and they have a lot of different specializations when it comes to AIX certifications. There's the Certified Specialist in the P5 and P Series, Administration and Support. There's the Certified Specialist in Basic Operations, Technical Sales Support, Sales Solutions, Enterprise Technical Support, Virtualization Technical Support, HACMP, which is failover or a type of clustering for AIX systems. There's the Technical Expert, and there's the Advanced Technical Expert. So they have a lot of different options for Unix certification from IBM, and then there's the Sun options here. So in conclusion, in this video we talked about the CompTIA Linux Plus certification, and that's the primary certification this video series is going to prepare you for. Of course, this video would also do a great job of preparing you for the Red Hat Certified Technician and Red Hat Certified Engineer exams, as well as the LPI Linux Professional Institute, the LPIC certifications. Other options for certification are, of course, the Novell Certified Linux Professional and Certified Linux Engineer exams, primarily based on Novell's SUSE Linux. There's also the SAIR GNU Linux Certified Administrator offering, and then there's a couple Unix certifications available if you got interested in Unix and those certification options. So with that, that's the end of video number 2. I hope you learned a lot about different Linux certifications. In our next video, we'll be covering the installation of Red Hat Linux.